After Apocalypse Weekend wrapped up the original Postal 2 storyline in a nice nuclear bow, Running with Scissors was, of course, going to continue the story of the Postal Dude and his dog Champ. But, due to financial problems that we'll get more into later, they really couldn't do it all by themselves. So they had help from Russian game publisher Akela and their in-house game development team Trashmasters. With all three of these companies combined, we got Postal 3. Now, Postal 3... Shut the fuck up! Okay, so Postal 3 is a very, hated game by the Postal community, if you can't tell. But let me just start this off and state my views on Postal 3, since I know from the title I probably look like a huge Postal 3 fan or whatever. I don't hate this game, but I don't love it either. The game itself is fine, mediocre to okay at best. It's boring sometimes, but there's some actually pretty good and interesting things in this game. But, of course, some is pretty mediocre as well, that we'll get into after I tell you the development cycle of Postal 3, because Jesus Christ, this lore goes far. So, after Apocalypse Weekend came out, Running with Scissors was kind of really broke in 2004, when they started thinking up Postal 3, because they got fucked over by their old publisher. They were so broke, in fact, that they actually couldn't really develop Postal 3 by themselves, so they had to make a collaboration by developing Postal 3 with Russian game publisher Akela and Akela's in-house team Trashmasters. Now, Akela was the publisher for everything Postal related in Russia, and they created the Russian exclusive add-on Corkscrew Rules. So they had a pretty obviously solid working relationship with Running with Scissors, so they would be technically the best option since they had a lot of Postal stuff under the belt, and Postal was/is really popular in Russia, so it's a great idea, right? Development was split between Akela and Running with Scissors. Running with Scissors would take care of the voice acting, game design, concept art. Steve Wick mainly took care of these next ones, design docs, scripts, etc. And Trashmasters were in charge of mapping, coding, and modeling to an extent. And with that, things were good like this for a while actually. Granted, there was apparently very little transparency and communication on Trashmasters' end, but they were getting the game done efficiently from what was shown in this golden era, so everything seemed to be good, right? The story should have ended here, with Akela and Running with Scissors finishing Postal 3 on time and only with a little bit of jank. But with the console releases and multiplayer helping get the game popular, this became the best Postal game that ever came. So none of that obviously happened, because of the 2008 recession that hit the US and Russia hard. So things went south. Very, very, very south. Now you're probably wondering why I singled out Steve Wick earlier. Well, that's because Steve Wick's Postal 3 design docs were definitely a lot, and very ambitious. Like, Jesus, there's 482 pages for the Postal 3 design docs. Going over the design docs is actually a very fascinating read because we have a glimpse of what Postal 3 could have been. If you close your eyes and huff gasoline, you can even envision the gameplay in your head. There is a ton of cut content in the design docs, and I mean a lot because, well, some of the things are a bit outlandish, if not impractical, and like I said, too ambitious for the developers and especially the Source engine. Oh yeah, they decided to use the Source engine because the games that came out on the Source engine were good and because it was apparently pretty cheap compared to other game engines at the time. And this is gonna sound like a complete understatement, but the devs were having a hard time. A lot of people working on the game got fired because Akela couldn't pay all of them, and those who stayed were only getting paid once every 2 to 3 months, while most of them were extremely inexperienced, so they understandably needed to get this game finished as soon as possible. So the design doctor Alexander Lachine cut a lot of stuff that either didn't make sense for game design, didn't make sense in game story, or things they just couldn't code in time, or were unable to code since the team was small and filled with inexperienced people. So missions were shortened, reused, or straight up cut. Health items were cut altogether, multiplayer was dead in the water a long time ago despite having a lot of work done into it. A whole ass ending was just thrown away, and so much more, honestly. I'm gonna leave a link in the description to a copy of the design docs because there was a lot of stuff cut from this game, and I really want people to see what this game could have been for it themselves. So we got a very, very messy, unfinished game that was 4 years late and was something completely different to what Postal fans expected or saw from builds prior. To fans who were expecting something like Postal 2, I'm sure they were more than confused by the new third-person perspective, linear storyline, technically less freedom, very buggy release, and no Rick Hunter? So let's start this off with the first few missions that are 100% linear. Now, gonna be honest, these and mostly all of the Postal 3 missions, aside from the tutorial, are basically get X amount of this and then kill or don't, with a lot of cutscenes sprinkled in until you get to the first mission that introduces the karma system. Now, the karma system is kind of really hated by people who've played Postal 3, even though most of them haven't even gotten to the mission where it's introduced. But it's honestly a pretty interesting concept because what games at the time had a karma system that actually affected the game story? And it's self-explanatory too for people who whine about being good and bad in a Postal game. Of course you have to be good to be technically good to get a good ending. But you can still also go postal on certain missions, almost all of them actually, unless you do a pacifist route. Bad Path honestly should have just been called the Insane Path or the Postal route because going senselessly postal is what's going to get you on that route. Let's actually talk about these routes now since we went over the karma system, starting off with how I played the game. The Good Path is more or less an occasionally semi-pacifist route. There are some missions like the patrol missions where you have to detain people, but there's still some missions where you kill. The Postal dude in this path is obviously a law-abiding cop who fights the ecotologists, hockey moms, gamers, Taliban, your own Uncle Dave, Ron Jeremy, and yeah, that's basically the whole Good Path. The dude fights the villains with a few missions, cutscenes, and bosses being exclusive to this path only. And as I said earlier, all the missions are basically kill or collect X amount of Y. It gets repetitive and boring. But if you get used to the weapons, it can be kind of fun. Let's actually talk about the weapons because I want to. So in Postal 3 you have of course guns, melee, and explosives. Now, of course everyone knows that throwing things can crash the game. That actually stopped working on my game. That melee doesn't work too well, and everyone says that the AR is good, which is true. But the game still has the Postal weapon creativity, with the most memorable to me being the Badger Saw and the Crotchy Bombs, because the saw being a living animal is a thing that could only be in Postal, and the Crotchy Bombs are actually mini nukes instead of the fart cloud they are in Postal 2. Enough about the weapons, let's get back to the Good Path. But really, all there is to talk about in this path is just the final exclusive bosses. You got Uncle Dave, Ron Jeremy, Osama, Hugo Chavez, the whole shebang. The first 3 you attack all at once, and the last one you most likely take out hidden behind a wall. So, like I said earlier, the missions in the Bad Path are just kind of collect or kill X amount of Y. It's a little interesting to see a completely different side to the missions you do on the Good Path, but that usually doesn't last long because the missions get repetitive. You use the same weapons usually, you do the same type of missions but with just a new coat of paint. There's new exclusive bosses and missions just like the Good Path. This also segues into Postal 3's biggest flaw, repetitive missions. I can do these missions normally of course, but if I want to 100% the game, then I have to continue killing X amount of Y over and over and over again. I wish the game had some unique missions or even the non-lethal weapons they cut, or even just better AI in general, so I wouldn't have to technically engage in constant killing. I wish I could walk to each mission just like the previous game, so I can just have a tiny bit of downtime to find weapons or just to soak in Catharsis, which is one of the most atmospheric cities in the Postal series. I know that the development team just couldn't do it, but unfortunately it sucks to see that because the base idea of the good and bad paths are good. You get exclusive missions, cutscenes, sometimes weapons and bosses. Having one of the most iconic Postal characters, Crotchy, being path-specific gives the game smart replayability, but that's ruined because the missions are repetitive and boring getting up to him. I bet the people who first played Postal 3 went down the bad path and then complained after seeing the ending where the dude gets executed saying, "Why do I have to be good for a good path? This is dumb, it's just punishing me for going postal." Which is kind of right, but come on, you're attacking civilians as a cop, of course you're gonna get caught eventually. Let's just get to the last in-game path. So the pacifist path is just the good path with no killing or anything. You get a special ending and that's all. Now, the cut insane path wasn't really cut from what I can tell, it was just merged a bit and kind of turned into the bad path. It really sucks that we got cut down to 3 paths technically, and how poorly thought out the main 2 were after the merge. The bad path shouldn't be considered bad since going postal is so natural with a ready array of weapons, but the non-linearity just kind of ruined everything. Looking at everything cut in the design docs, there's a lot that could have made the game so much better honestly. Health items, non-lethal ammo, weapon upgrades, and especially in-game free roam would have made the repetitive missions better. Genuine question for the person watching. Yes, you. Yeah, you, watching this, while shitting or smoking a Newport. Have you played Postal 3? If you have, how far did you get? Did you get past Porn World? Did you go into the game after watching Civi's video with a closed mind? Now, this is gonna sound crazy, but it's like, every time I see people talk shit about Postal 3 in the Running with Scissors Discord, they tell me they haven't played it after I ask, have you played it? It's kind of like, people only watch Civi's video on Postal 3 and then just repeat what Running with Scissors say on their Twitter. Now, before I get into all the shit I want to say, don't buy Postal 3 on Steam, because the money honestly doesn't go anywhere since Akela is legally dead and Running with Scissors doesn't get money from the sales. Get a key off GTA or even go on a shady website to get it for free, but you should at least try Postal 3 before spewing out what everyone else says about Postal 3, because when those people talk to someone who actually has a nuanced opinion about the game, it just turns into shit-slinging and name-calling. The game is just okay gameplay-wise. I know it disappointed fans, but there was still hard work put into this game by people who barely knew what to do. And yes, Running with Scissors has every right to be pissed at this game. It almost ended their company, but their constant shitting on the game has kind of painted Akela in a bad light, when Akela did what they could for the time, and tapes kick me signs on fans with positive things to say about Postal 3. It's good that people can come to some agreements, like the music being good and Corey Cruz being great, as always, but there's more in this game that's good, you just need to open your mind to see it. Postal 3 needs people to acknowledge it so we can change its reputation from worst Postal game ever to hopefully they tried their best at the time and we should commend them for that. Some talented people have already done that with 2 promising mods that I'm gonna show you here, and hopefully you'll check them out and support them. So at the end of each mod summary, I actually got to interview each project lead of these 2 mods, so wait for those if you're interested in the development details of such in these mods. Catharsis Reborn is a complete rewrite of Postal 3, adding in some cut content all while taking its own spin on the game, and even cleaning the game up too so it's not a buggy mess for some people. Catharsis Reborn is built off base Postal 3, along with having the Postal 3 source code to aid them in development, along with beta and newly created assets for this game by the talented workers at Whacked Up Interactive. The mod goes back to basics with the 5-day week full of errand structure from Postal 2, with free roam added back in so you can explore these amazingly made maps and take in this new imagining of Catharsis. Each ModDB post and YouTube trailer they put out is always filled with content they've added. Right now, they're mainly focusing on getting their demo out since I believe the mod's been in development for around 6 years. But from what's been shown, that's a good 6 years put to good use. Hopefully, when the demo comes out, people get the original Postal 3 to try both the mod and the game so that they can see how far talented people can take this game.
Catharsis Reborn was born out of a big disappointment with the end product of Postal 3, and some wishful thinking about what could have been done that came from seeing older footage of the game from 2007 and 2008, where lots of content that didn't make it to the final release was showcased. So making our own sequel to Postal 2 while trying not to make the same mistakes as retail Postal 3 was on our minds from the get-go. We know how unpopular the linear design, poor quality missions, awkward writing, and other elements of the game were for Postal fans, and we don't want to make those same mistakes. It really depends. Sometimes seemingly complex issues can be fixed very quickly with not much work. Sometimes seemingly simple issues spiral out of scope into huge problems. Sometimes fixing one bug can create dozens more. You don't really know the consequences of your efforts to fix a problem until you go through with it and test the game a lot to see the results. We don't plan to publicly release the Postal 3 source code because it isn't ours to publicize. We didn't make it, don't own it, and were asked not to release it when it was provided to us. That being said, you don't need the source code to mod Postal 3. We worked on Catharsis Reborn without it for many years, and while it was a more hacky, tedious process, a lot of the files like scripts, sounds, models, and all sorts were very open and easy to change or replace. So if you have a decent idea of what you're doing, you can make a creative project with Postal 3 as a base if you want to. It's just as the black sheep of the franchise, Postal 3 is a niche of a niche, so it doesn't have much of a modding community. Because of the reputation the game got and its lacking features, many consider it unsalvageable, and that contributes to a lack of interest in modding. It's not like a game like, say, Half-Life 2 where the base game is already well known and popular, making it a good springboard for mod projects. But again, it's totally possible to mod Postal 3, and Postal 3 is actually one of the easier games to mod if you want to make changes that don't reach the scale of a total conversion like Catharsis Reborn. And of course, there will be nothing stopping people from using Catharsis Reborn as a base for their own mods when there are public builds, if they want to take advantage of extra features / mechanics not in the base game. It depends entirely on the month, as we are a volunteer team that isn't paid. We don't have a consistent work schedule. Members work on the project when they have the time and the interest to do so. Sometimes people are very free and can offer up lots of their time, and at other points, they have other commitments like jobs, education, or other projects they have to be focused on. So one month can see huge achievements, lots of new assets, features, and mechanics added, and another month might be much quieter. Catharsis Reborn is a passion project rather than a job, so there's no such thing as consistent hours for better or worse. On a project, the priorities are decided by the project lead, and from there it's up to the relevant team members to tackle those priorities in the time they have for the project. Sometimes tasks will be suggested by other members, and the project lead will decide which of these is most important / useful to development, and other times the task will be brought up by the project lead instead. But either way, there's a discussion where it's worked out what is most important to focus on and what can be put aside for the time being. Tasks are more likely to be a priority if either they are important for making the demo into a more release-ready product, or if they are noteworthy additions like new features or major bug fixes. Ultimately, it's up to the developers what they do at any given time, but the sort of prioritization helps focus things more and is generally used as a good guide for progress. It depends. Sometimes it's very useful and important, and other times it's not that needed. The rule of thumb is the more new, aka not seen in vanilla Postal 3, a feature is, the more likely you will need changes to the source code to work on it. There hasn't been total rewrites to the script, but segments of it have been changed before, and sometimes entire missions or sections are rewritten, replaced, or expanded on, either because more originality or content is needed, or ideas that work on paper don't work for gameplay and practice. The script is a continually evolving thing, and a section of it is only considered final after all its dialogue has been recorded. Even then, there can sometimes be further changes if voice actors are able to do more recordings, and we have worthwhile ideas to improve things further. We are mostly focused on the demo and develop with that in mind, so completeness of the game in full isn't usually considered, but some aspects are more finished than others. For example, our script covers the game start to finish and is done for a long time now. More parts of it are recorded than what's planned to appear for the demo. Mapping wise, we already have various post-demo areas worked on as well. Other assets though are not more developed than they need to be for the demo, like the cutscene animation, where we have focused on the sections that will appear in the demo first before anything else, and decided to leave further work until later down the line. We actually experimented with this idea already in the past, redoing the mod from scratch on a later version of Source, something the experimental build. This build replaced the Postal 3 build for a few months, and news about this could be seen in a video on our YouTube channel called An Update from Whack Job Interactive. This build was discontinued, and we returned to the Postal 3 build when I became project lead, because as much as using a different version of Source, or even a completely different engine entirely would take away a lot of the obstacles that come with Postal 3 as a base, it's just not worth losing all the mechanics that come with it. It's better to progress further than to waste a huge chunk of time just to build back up to where you already are all over again. It was underestimated just how much work that would be when this experimental build idea was pitched and tried out. In hindsight, it can be said that the experiment was a failed one, but at least it was a learning experience. That depends on how much further we want to go content-wise before we would consider a demo release worthy or feature complete, and how long we would want to spend having a QA testing process carried out to iron out bugs and gather overall feedback. These things are still undecided, and we don't want to promise release dates or even rough timeframes unless we're 100% confident it's something we're happy with and able to deliver on. It's not fun keeping people in the dark about potential releases, but it's better to do that than promise dates or deadlines and run the risk of disappointing fans by passing them by. If you don't get overhyped, you won't get disappointed.
Now, I know the thought of a complete rewrite of Postal 3 or staying with the Postal 3 base might not be appealing for some people for whatever reason, but if you want to go back to what you're used to, then check out Postal 3 Unreal. It's a complete overhaul of Postal 2 to have the storyline from Postal 3 but with the base Postal 2 along with new maps and models added in by the two developers. All this work you're seeing right now on screen, it was made by 2 people and it looks amazing. Currently, there's only a demo out, but that only just shows a few weapons, new remake of the beta map, new models, and the new simplified karma system. But everything in this mod still looks amazing, and genuinely I can't wait till it comes out. Now, since I got a huge interview with one of the developers, I'm gonna cut this summary very short so you can just have more insights for Postal 3 Unreal.
Well, yes, knowing the code and all the modern stuff is the main reason. However, there's more. When Postal 3 Unreal was started, it was developed by Anthology production team. They known for mods like TK Mutator, Gringo Market series. It's the best. A lot of multiplayer mods like Day of Death and all this stuff. So yeah, after so many years of such experience, it was pretty obvious that Postal 3 Unreal will be as a mod for Postal 2. Mark, he's a main developer. He was experimenting a lot with making good-looking lighting stuff. He was learning from Killing Floor video game. And as you can see, his little experiments goes too far. uh, first, first they were thinking to make Postal 3 port, but with some beta stuff like beta Postal Dude, levels from beta, and some missions. But this idea was dropped pretty quick. However, some people was thinking that they still making something better related. It's difficult to make something that you don't know a thing about. Like, you can't really know what was on mind of developers these days. Speaking of reasons of using Postal 2 base is to provide the better and familiar experience, because people love Postal 2, and I'm pretty sure they would like to know about Postal 3 from the perspective they used to know. Some people was asking us like, why you don't make it on Unreal Engine 3, 4, Unity engine, or put any other famous engine here. But it should be obvious to them that it will take a lot of work. I mean, a lot of work. For example, the AI of pedestrians or enemies. People used to know that Postal 2 AI is pretty dumb and janky sometimes, but trust me, the code has a lot of hidden things. There is a lot of code that was written by the very talented programmer. His name is Nathan Folds, by the way, with the help of another veteran of game industry, Mike Riddle. And you probably heard about these Postal 2 fan remakes. They was cancelled later because no one can replicate the same behavior like it was in Postal 2. Even in Postal 4, the AI feels for me like a cheap parody to what we have seen in Postal 2. Also, another example that comes in my mind is Cry of Fear mod for Half-Life. You heard about it?
Yes, I have.
So you see, people was asking Team Scalara, I hope I said it right, why you have used Gold Source Engine instead of Source Engine. And the answer was simple. They has a lot of experience with Gold Source Engine, and I can understand them. They also managed to build in some fancy technologies like water reflections, bump mapping. Mark would love to have bump mapping system in Postal 2, but it's impossible because Ryan Inquisitors not released source code yet, and we're not sure that it would work, because seriously, Postal 2 sometimes is literally falling apart thanks to Steam updates. So that's about it. Not so much. Mostly it's weapons. We already have a sniper rifle, infected pigeons, Desert Eagle, which was supposed to be a main pistol in Postal 3, M16, and Wolverine. Yeah, however, he can be used on that famous town map from Alpha and from demo version of Postal 3 Unreal. Speaking of that town map, it's still here, and it was redone in some places after we got the real alpha version of Postal 3. By the way, it will be still possible to play it as a separate game mod, so it will have a special alpha atmosphere thanks to weapons and pedestrians that was seen in this alpha and all these videos. Also, some levels from retail Postal 3 got some cut things back, like a river in Ecotologist compound that was cut because of performance issues. Well, that's all what I can remember for now for cut features. Yes, yes, and yes. Um, Postal 3 Unreal is a straight port of Postal 3, so yeah, storyline will be the same. People was asking us if the Postal 3 Unreal will have a different storyline, and I was like, what? What different storyline you want? We should design it from scratch to fit the content of the game, or what? Seriously, this question is kind of weird for me. I know, some people is not pleased with Postal 3 storyline, but there's nothing we can do. Maybe, just maybe, with the familiar experience of Postal 2, they will feel that it's not that bad. I really hope so, so we trying to do our best. Also, in my honest opinion, Postal 3 storyline is way more adequate than to what I have seen in Paradise Lost or even in Postal 4. But that's just me, yeah. Can't really say. Sometimes we can make 1% of progress on, let's say, April, and 20% on July. Like, life is an unpredictable thing. You can't say what will take your time. And of course, it's better to spend your precious time on family, friends, work. So we don't have any kind of schedule. It just goes when we have a time and mood for it. That's how the most fan mods being developed, I think. Well, unfortunately, we will still using videos from Postal 3. I'm really enjoying the process of making cutscenes for Postal 2. If you have seen my YouTube videos, most of them was made right in the game engine. This system called Matinee in Unreal Engine 2. And some people was asking us to reanimate Postal 3 cutscenes, but yeah, it will take a lot of work, unfortunately. So we decided to use Postal 3 cutscenes, despite the fact they will look very compressed, thanks to the shitty video codec that Running with Scissors decided to use in Apocalypse Weekend. Like seriously, this system allows the videos only in resolution of 512 in width and 226 in height. It will also have a lot of artifacts. Yeah, but there is no any other options for us, unfortunately. Maybe for these times the big BIK video system was expensive for this time. I don't know, because you can look on Land of the Dead video game that also using Unreal Engine 2, and it looks way better with a BIK video system. Thanks to Running with Scissors, yeah, mostly. But also thanks to them, we actually having Postal 3 Unreal developed. You mean how it's far from being finished, right?
Yes.
About 70%. 70. Why so? Well, we still need to implement missions, which I'm working with, to make all these scripted events and triggers where it needs. By the way, I already coded the mission where you need to collect the cats with catnip. This system counts if you picked up the cat and not let the counter be triggered again if you throw out the cat and pick it again. Also, some weapons is still not finished, like pepper spray, beehive, and of course the vacuum cleaner. There's a simple prototype of it already. There's a simple prototype of it already that works like a gravity gun, but it should work for the Pawn World mission, where you need to collect napkins. But I'm sure we will find out how to make it work anyway. I don't know, seriously. Um, because first, I never tested the wall mod. I mean, playing from start to the end, because it's technically impossible. Because the mod is not completed yet. So yeah, I can't really say about it. And second, it actually depends on players' actions. Yeah, you heard that right. The simplified moral system that everyone hates will be here as well. So you can be a good boy and join the cops or get fired from being a cop. It's up to players' actions. So thanks for this system. It will be difficult to say how many play hours will be spent on this game. Speaking of me, I'm using Postal. Yes, it's pretty obvious. This editor is also necessary to upload mods to Workshop. Also, I'm using Milkshake 3D and 3ds Max for models and animations. Milkshake 3D is an old thing, but still very handy and convenient to make something real fast. And of course, there's a Notepad Notepad plus plus for coding stuff. Sometimes we're still joking to the newbies, like they're asking, "I want to make Postal 2 mod. What tool I should use?" I'm saying Notepad. And he was like, what? Notepad? But how? Simple. Seriously, you can use the usual Notepad, I mean default one, and yes, you're cooking with gas. Yeah. So speaking of Posted, oh boy, I wish all the editors will have the same interface, tools, and everything that Unreal Engine 2 has. Because seriously, it's a pure enjoyment for me to work with this engine. I'm using it since 2008 year. So yeah, you can imagine that it's a really big experience. Need to note that Steam version of Posted became pretty advanced and more friendly to user. However, it also became more crash friendly. Yeah, so when I'm about to make a new geometry or there will be mapping for a long time, I prefer to stick with old Posted. Yeah. You will laugh if I will tell you. Seriously. You ready?
Yes.
You ready? Okay, here goes the story. Imagine that you are Mark and you are developing Postal 3 Unreal. Imagined already?
Yes.
Okay. So you are just doing usual things, mapping the levels, testing them, and then you realizing that something goes wrong. When you're killing pedestrians or enemies, instead of going ragdoll and falling to the ground, they're just exploding. I mean, exploding with meat like jibbing in Quake. So what are you doing? You're trying to find what causes this problem. You trying to recompile all the scripts. Not working. You're going to the highest risk and rebuilding the levels. Why it's so risky? Well, if you're rebuilding lightings and geometry way too often, you have a risk to get a broken geometry or lighting, and you need to be really lucky to fix it somehow. So, what you think rebuilding has helped you so much? No. And Mark, I mean you, you asking your fellows, maybe they know what to do. And no. After some time, maybe a month, you hanging out on my Discord server, and it just happens that someone tells you that this exploding dead bodies is the problem of original game.
So
Running with Scissors managed to fucking broke it with one of their updates. Someone will ask you, but how? How you didn't know about it? We do know about it for a long time and still waiting it to be fixed. But the problem is that you was focused on your mod all this time. You never touched the original game all this time. You don't give a single fuck about the original game because it became painful to even look on it. So yeah, you breathed a sigh of relief at last, and you was waiting for this fix for another year, but but still, this was the hardest thing you have faced while developing this mod. Hard to believe, but yes, this one was really difficult because you don't know what to do, and suddenly you're realizing that it was the Running with Scissors fault. And by the way, it's worth to mention that this was fixed only when a lot of people started to ask them to fix it. Like, fix it. We was really bombing their Twitter to finally make something. Because it was 2 years. 2 years. it takes 2 years to finally fix it. But, people wasn't really care. Because, this bug or problem, sometimes it's working, sometimes it's not. Like, sometimes it goes to ragdoll, or sometimes they're exploding. You can't really say. But also some people was asking, like, why Running with Scissors should fix it? It works like intended. You know what? I'm playing Postal 2 for a long time, and before Steam updates, nothing like that was happening. Nothing like that. So please don't say something like it works like it intended. No, it's not. So yeah, that's about it. It was a tough times. Yeah. Here we go with the difficult questions. We already failed with promised third quarter of this year, and we're really sorry for that. As I said, life is a predictable thing, especially with the difficult times our country is experiencing today. And there's a lot of other reasons beside of that. After the announcement, me and Mark, we have discussed some plans about the missions, some weapons, and started to do something. Time flies. Mark started to make a mod that replaced Postal 2 weapons with weapons from Postal 4. You may ask what for? To get a little distracted from Postal 3 Unreal, and I can understand him because Postal 3 Unreal was first announced in November 5, 2014 year. And since this day, Mark is still working with this mod. I'm really surprised and proud of his patience to work with this mod that long. Of course, with some breaks and this mod with Postal 4 weapons is another one break that Mark deserved, I guess. But after some time, Mark said that he's dropping Postal 3 Unreal and giving it to my hands.
So, wait.
Yes, there. I know this pause. Yes.
So you're 100% in development of Postal 3 Unreal?
Yes, yes. That's why I have delayed this interview to finally reveal this to everyone who's listening right now, and of course to you. But hey, don't get sad. Don't get sad that fast. It doesn't mean that Postal 3 Unreal is over. It doesn't mean that we're canceling it. No, and no. When I will need some help from Mark, I'm sure he will be glad to help me. But for now, I'm experienced enough to handle this mod, and I hope to finally make it released. And I will also ask for help from our friend from Poland, Ben Satan. Greetings to you if you're hearing this. he's also a legend of Postal 2 mod making as well.
X-Patch developer?
Yeah. His outstanding known work, X-Patch, that was also approved by Rangu Scissors. So I'm sure that we'll do something about it. I'm really thankful to everyone who is still waiting and supporting Mark's work. So still, yes, we will try to do our best. It can't be just cancelled. A lot of progress was made already, so no turning back. And after telling you all this, I I still can't answer on your question after what's happened. But when we will get organized, then we will let you know about any possible dates of release. By the way, to the listeners, if you want to get more news about Postal 3 Unreal, you can join my Discord server and be the first who will get all the news. So yeah, thank you so much for listening.
With all of that said, now what? Well, I made this video because I always see this game get shit on. All the time. Even when it's just mentioned in a passing glance, or not mentioned at all. I see people who've never played this game say it's a horrible, buggy mess, and say it's the worst game ever, when there's definitely much worse out there. I know the story is kind of boring, and the gameplay gets repetitive, but there was hard work put into this game. There was a vision for this game that might have some things unreachable due to the engine limitations and practicality, recession, or even just the inexperienced team. But I still commend the people who worked their asses off on this game because they tried. I hope with the 2 mods coming out, or even this video, that people actually see that this game can be redeemed and have a better reputation, because honestly in the end, Postal 3 was just given a bad hand. Akela nie się da nie się pokocho.